All right. So, hey, everybody. I am so glad to be here today with Darius Wallace, a new friend who has just basically a whole life centered around this idea that we are shaping our reality with our stories. So, I'm so excited to get into it. Darius, can you just introduce yourself, whatever it is that you'd like to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. I want to say that you know my name is spelled like Darius, but it's pronounced
Oh,
Darius.
oh
Now
dear.
here's the thing though. It's 8 billion people on the planet. They all say Darius except me.
That is
Everybody
cool.
gets confused, so it's okay. But it's Darius.
Darius.
Yes, and you know what? I didn't ask how to pronounce your name too. So
Yeah. Well, as a person who's like basically no one has ever pronounced my name correctly, I really like, would you like to restart and we could like start
no,
fresh with Darius?
oh
Okay.
no, actually this is great because it enables, it enables it to be more of a welcoming experience
Yeah.
because it happens all the time, but
Yeah.
okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's just a learning experience and then people remember it more.
That's right. And that example that you're modeling is like exactly what we both really care a lot about, which is you could either experience that situation as like, oh gosh, again, nobody says my name right. Like, poor me. This
uh,
is awful. Or you could be like, hey, this is a cool opportunity. So I love how you just modeled that.
oh,
Um,
right.
yeah, beautiful. So Darius.
And yes, and how do you
Okay.
pronounce it?
And so my name, the first name is Gazit Chaya, and it has like a throat clearing sound with the CH,
Okay.
like in Hebrew when you say l'chaim or like
Oh,
challah bread.
Gazihaya.
Yeah,
Is that right?
beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful.
Okay.
And then I also go by Z for those who just can't quite get my name.
Okay. 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 Excellent. 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 So is it okay if I call you Z?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
but it's uh Gahaya?
Gazit Chaya.
Gazihaya?
Yeah, beautiful.
Haya. Okay, great. That's
Yeah, yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I go by both, and my last name is Nkosi, but
Beautiful.
sometimes people say it Nkosi, and so yeah, names are a cool story in and of themselves.
Yes, it's true. Very true.
Yeah. Did
Indeed.
someone in your family have that pronunciation for a specific reason of Darius?
Um, I can honestly say I don't know. I don't know if it's a unique pronunciation because that's how my father thought it was pronounced.
Yeah.
You know what I But I do know that it's Iranian.
Ooh.
And I met someone from Iran. He says in Iran we pronounce it Dariush.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I've
Ah.
heard Darius, I've
Mm-hmm.
heard Darius, Darius, and then Darius.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one on the planet that's Darius. I could be wrong, but hey,
Well, I like the only one on the planet thing.
I
That's
do
very
too.
cool. I think I'm the only Gazit Chai and Kosi on the planet. Hebrew plus Zulu is like not a typical matchup.
Oh
Um,
my
but
goodness.
yeah,
Hebrew plus Zulu?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Our
Oh,
last name Nkosi is in honor of a little guy, Nkosi Johnson, who worked against AIDS discrimination in South Africa before he passed away. And he worked again, on a global scale, spoke to the United Nations, and he had this beautiful speech about how we are all the same. We all laugh, we all cry, we all bleed. And it just I get chills every time I talk about him. And I got
yeah.
to know his adopted mother, who gave us her blessing to honor him by taking his name as our last name. So
Wow. That's really amazing. That's
it
really Have you
is.
heard of Lusama Zulu Credo Matwa?
No, but I'd like to.
He wrote a book called Zulu Shaman that I'm reading, and it's a really powerful book. And so it's just ironic. And
Wow.
then there's a college in Portland called Lewis and Clark,
Uh-huh.
and the guy that's bringing me in is his name is Kundai, and he's from Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and I'm
Amazing.
really having a South African Zulu energy vibe going on. You know,
Well,
these,
then this is a synchronicity and another affirmation that you're on the right track with that.
yeah,
How
yeah,
powerful.
yeah. Now, are you in South Africa right now?
No, I've never
Where-
been. It's a dream, and
Okay,
we plan to go meet my kiddo and I have a
yeah.
12-year-old.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and
Great.
my kiddo is the one whose beloved dog, Frederick Douglass, just passed
Oh,
away.
well, yes, you told me that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Well,
Yeah. So I think you and
sorry.
I's worlds were really meant to collide.
Yes, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. This is great. This
Okay,
is
so we
great.
didn't even get to your bio. So what do you want to share about you other than your name pronunciation?
Yeah, well, I'm an actor predominantly, and I'm a speaker and speaking and communications coach, um, by accident. But let me tell you about the acting first. I grew up in Flint, Michigan. I went to high school at a place called Interlochen Arts Academy. Went away to purchase to study theater in New York, and then I had my first theater experience with Michigan Shakespeare Festival, and I started my first one-person show playing Malcolm X, and
Oh,
then it became
wow.
Martin Luther King, and then I started to do a little theater and a little television, and then I had a period of time that was kind of dark. We may get into that. Then I
Mhm.
came back to the light and became a company member at Playhouse on the Square in Memphis. Wrote Frederick Douglass
Amazing.
way back. I don't even want to say how long back. I may say it later. How long ago it was, and then started doing more film and television. And I've been on Nashville, Law and Order SVU. I've been in some movies, indies, a lot of plays and independent films. And now I do one person show still on Frederick Douglass, and I have a couple of others. One is called My Words Are My Sword, and I got into coaching by accident. I was sitting in a Starbucks drinking some coffee.
Uh-huh.
This guy sat down, and we started talking about Miles Davis, and he asked
Uh,
what I did. I was an actor, and we got into that. And he said, "Hey, you know, I own a commercial real estate company, and I got these brokers that need some help with their presentations. Can you help them?"
wow.
And I was like, "You paying?"
Yeah. You're like, I can do anything.
Yeah, because I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, I never did that before. He
Yeah.
said, "Sure, we'll do it." I was like, "Of course I can." You know, so what I did was is I used acting techniques to help them, and they actually loved it.
Yeah.
And But I personally grew concerned with translating the language of acting to the
Hmm.
language of the organizational and the corporate world. And through
Hmm.
the course of time, I learned how to bridge the two together. And then I became a TEDx coach for TEDx Memphis for about 7 years.
Wow.
And so then, because I'm working with so many influencers every year, it just referrals and it just has snowballed into this thing. And so, still, I've coached head of corporations, head of studio, well, head of production companies, influencers, entrepreneurs, people who aspire to be better speakers, team leaders, and the list goes on and on. So, and then I do some inspirational speaking too. So that's, in a nutshell, some of my bio.
Yeah, you're out there sharing your gifts in a variety of ways, which I think is
Yes,
so beautiful. I love how you're tapping into both the richness that we can learn from our collective history and also
yes,
to the potential through allowing people to understand how to shape story in order to
yes,
connect with more people. So it's beautiful offering.
yes. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I'm most curious about with in general, but specifically with this podcast, is about how people experienced those moments where it was like, I could go down this path of the world is hopeless and it's a dark, nothing matters, and let's just give up. or to there are possibilities, and how there's sometimes some divine intervention in there. And I know a part of your story is that there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, a high school teacher or a high school opportunity that really sort of gave you support in navigating that choice. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, I love to tell that story. So in Flint, Michigan, who's heard of Flint? We know what Flint is known for now. um, it wasn't always like that.
Mhm.
Flint actually, when I was growing up, way back in the um,
I think
probably
age is something
before
to be
you're born.
proud of. You know, you've survived this thing all these years. I think
Yeah.
that's something to wear as a badge of honor.
Well, you know what? I'm going to take your advice on that. And I'm going to say way back in the 1900s, Flint was actually an opulent place back in the 70s,
Yeah.
60s, 50s. And so I grew up as a little boy in the 70s. And I only have just these bright, beautiful, amazing memories growing up. Not to say that there wasn't the challenges of what you grow up when you're young, but I just have more memories of just this bright, amazing, electric, energetic, period of time. And Flint was
Mhm.
like that. Everybody
Mhm.
had jobs pretty much. Um, there was crime, but I don't remember it being, never felt like life threatening, stepping out of the door type situation. And when back during that time, my father went to see this movie and he rushed back. He picked me up and he took me to see the movie. And when I came back, I was kicking and punching and screaming. I had just seen Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon.
Hey.
And I wanted to be just like Bruce Lee. And so I started studying martial art. Well, early 80s, things changed.
Mm.
GM pretty much dropped out of Flint, Detroit.
Yep. Yep.
There was a lot of a recession hit, and it was just a lot of joblessness.
Mhm.
Same time, the crack epidemic hit,
Yep.
and so no one knew what was happening and what that was. We just knew that the city that we grew up in was transforming into this very hard, harsh,
Mm.
dangerous, place. And then at the same time, at 13 years old, I was this size
Yeah. Yeah.
with this voice, and I had these
Mhm.
sideburns, and I practiced martial art, and everybody
Mm.
called me Big Phil. My full name is Phil Darius Wallace. I just go by my
Mhm.
middle name, but they called me Big Phil. And so I was a prime target for street life, gang life.
Mhm.
And so there was these kids that were getting jumped all around the city. When I say jumped, I mean really, really bad.
Yeah.
And now when I think about it, I wonder that if this friend of mine was he just trying to recruit me when I think
Uh,
back on it. But he says, "You're on the list."
yeah.
I'm on the list of what? Getting jumped. So if you
Mhm.
want to be protected, you better join this gang.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm with it.
Yeah,
I don't
let's
want to.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did. And going through the that initiation process was a very, very terrifying thing. My life was not my own.
Yeah.
And whenever called, I had to show up. And it was, even though I was this size, I was still
You were a
13.
little guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So there was an incident in the middle school. It was called junior high back in those days. And a weapon was involved, and the weapon
Mhm.
was given to me, and I hid the weapon.
Okay.
But the vice principal found out about it.
Mhm.
And so he called me into his office and tried to make me tell him what the weapon was. I wouldn't tell him.
Right.
He says, I'm going to give you an option. He says, either you can continue going the route that you're going and go to juvenile home or jail, or you can do what I know you love to do, which is theater. or I can tell your dad. Now,
This facial
let me be
expression is
clear.
the best.
You can send me to jail. You can send me to juvenile home. Just
Don't
don't.
send me to my dad.
So anyway, yeah. Did you ever watch Good Times?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, my dad was the real James Evans. Okay,
Oh my.
live and in living color.
Woo.
Um, so I decided not to do that, and
Uh-huh.
um, and so I chose theater. The only problem was I was flunking my eighth grade acting class because every time I stood in front of people, I would always forget my lines
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was so shy. So my teacher gave me an opportunity, Mrs. O'Neill, to make it up, and she put me in a play called Midsummer Night's Dream, and I had one
No.
line. And I can't remember what that line was, but it was one line, and I couldn't say it. And she
Bless your
kept
heart.
coaching me and helping me to say it, and it was just not working out. So the night of the performance, all I remember is that I was just standing on stage waiting for my cue, and I'm hearing all this stuff and and so that's all I knew. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand Shakespeare at all. So I'm just standing there, and I hear my cue, and suddenly I say the line, and my voice fills the whole auditorium, and everybody looks because nobody had heard that voice come out. Anyway, at the end, this man who was probably about 5'5", looked very much like Sylvester Stallone, but he had a high pitched voice, more artistic than built like Sylvester Stallone, but he definitely looked like him. He was Italian. Martin Jennings was his name. Is his name, and he said, "Hey, you have an amazing voice and a great presence. I want you to be a part of the high school theater department." And I was like, yeah, I want to do this, you know? So basically what he did, he saw that I was shy. And so he started to teach me mime. And so with mime, it got me used to being in front of people without having to speak. And being a martial artist, it came naturally. And then when people started to laugh, suddenly it was like a rush, like boom, something broke. And I was like, I felt like I can reach these people. And then I
The
started speaking.
connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And so then the following year, he wanted me to, no, it's the same year, that for the following semester, he wanted me to audition for the lead in a play. Now, at this time, there has not been any freshman leads to go on the central stage. And this was in the 80s. And so here you are, this African American kid who is daring as a freshman to play the lead in the play. And it's like, it's a wrap. It'll never happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I wanted that part, man. I wanted that part. So throughout the whole Christmas holidays, I worked on it. I worked on it kind of like how I practiced martial arts. I had a lot of discipline practicing martial arts. So I worked on it. I worked on it. Came back, did the audition, got the role. Did the role. Then the matinee, the student matinee, finished that, walking home from school. And as I'm walking home, this car behind me slowly is driving behind me. Have you
Mm-hmm.
seen Boys in the Hood?
Yeah.
It was that kind of a scene.
Yeah.
Windows are tinted, and then the slowly
Mm-hmm.
pulls down, and he says,
Mm-hmm.
"Big Phil, get in the car." And so I get in the car, and so he's driving, and he was like, "Big Phil, we saw you in that play, and you talented. We don't want you to go this route. You do what you do." And they let me out of the car, and that was the end of that.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, that was the end of that. Yep, the streets let me out.
I never heard that story.
Yeah, and some of those guys lost their lives. Some
Yeah.
of those guys went to prison. Some of those guys actually turned their lives around. You know,
Yeah.
have been reached by a couple that are on Facebook, and
Oh,
and so you know, an amazing blessing because that particular gang
Yeah.
really was involved with and did some horrible things,
Yeah. Yeah.
horrible situations that
Yeah.
happened because of that particular street gang.
Yeah.
And so I was off to the races after that.
Darius, what a story. I mean, this piece about that moment is just the perfect example of those like two paths moment. And one of the things that I really experienced in my journey and that I know a lot of other people have is the identity that comes with being the victim or the struggling or the you know life gave me this difficult situation and the bonding especially that comes with a group of people who are all kind of victimized together or bonding in the struggle like in your you know experience with the gang there can sometimes be a guilt or like a difficulty allowing yourself to move on from that identity. Did you experience any of that? And if so, how did you support yourself with that?
Well, it was an initiation, so I hadn't done what's called jump off the porch. It's sort of the
Okay.
slang, for that. So there was no blood in yet for
Okay.
me. Um, and so my identity, there was two sets basically. A set is like what you're standing on, standing for, and what you're protecting, and
Mhm.
So there was the game's called the Top Dogs,
Mhm.
but then there's also your neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So it was interestingly, and I was a fighter, by the way. I
Mhm.
mean, I really did fight, and I fought. I kickboxed, and I actually kickboxed professionals
Uh-huh.
back at that time because of my
Mhm.
size.
Mhm.
So there was this. Even today, if I go back, there are people that are going to call me Big Phil. There are
Mhm.
people that from back in the day that still respect me because I didn't. They remember I didn't snitch this
Mhm.
particular person out.
Mhm.
So there was still this sense of connection, but I wasn't rooted and immersed in it to the point of completely feeling identified. I would say really, and this happens a lot, that you just get transformed. I wasn't the cool guy back in those days. I was
Mhm.
more of the nerd in those days, really.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
only thing that made me Big Phil was I was intimidating because of my size and I practiced martial art, but I wasn't the guy that enjoyed violence.
Mhm.
And even though I practiced and I fought, I didn't really enjoy it. That's probably why I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So with that, I would say um, there's not as much guilt there as
Mhm.
far as that goes. And it was an easy transition because I left the element. I was bused to another neighborhood, another school that took me
Right.
completely out of the element. And then, to be honest, it was a completely new world for me being around theater people.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was a unique world. I wrote a post of a friend, Joel Bates. This really funny. You know, he was 16, but he came across as like a Jewish father all the time. He
Okay.
was completely Anglo-Saxon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he just had that atmosphere. And he played my father in a play who was a Jewish father. You know what I mean? In a diversely casted play, but he embraced me
Mm.
and he became my best friend, and he kind of just guided me through this new world that was so different,
Mhm.
and it prepared me to be put into another new world, which is Interlochen Arts Academy, where I'm
Mhm.
surrounded by the arts from people from all over the world of all the different disciplines. You know what I mean? When you live there,
Oh, no
that high
kidding.
school you is a boarding school.
Oh,
I
so you
lived there.
really got taken out of
I
that.
was completely immersed. Now, here's the thing, though. You know, growing up, I was a timid, very thin child. So when my father got me into martial arts,
Hmm.
and I was bullied and picked on a lot, and so I was a terrified kid back in those days. So even though I had built up this body and practicing martial art, and I was 13 years old, and I was hanging out with these seniors, and I had a 19-year-old girlfriend, I didn't know no better. I just didn't know no better. When I think back, I was like,
Oh my
that
gosh.
was illegal. There was this kid, this broken kid in
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
that even when I went to Interlochen and even when I went to Purchase was still there.
Yeah.
And that's has been most of the guilt
Hmm.
because that kid in me was so had such low self-esteem, even though I was achieving amazing things
Yeah.
that, when I went to purchase this theater school, I was manipulated and I joined a cult.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Makes sense, right?
yeah, yeah. And I have to put down religion because there's a lot of great Christians and
Yeah.
Muslims and so forth. But this was a Christian cult,
Yep.
and it was the worst part of my life. And I left school because
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
and the, that guilt was the demon or the guilt that I had to somehow break free from because it continued to
Yeah.
follow and eat at me in the early part of my career.
Yep.
And that led me to my TEDx story when I, eventually became homeless and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask about the presence of fear, and sometimes that's intertwined with some of that guilt and that broken little guy. And it sounds like for me, the arc of the story, often it's like, here's a lesson, we're gonna give you it on this level, and you're like, okay, like I got a little bit of that story, and then sometimes we go back through it on another level, and it sounds
Yeah.
like you were given that with the cult experience.
Yeah. It was, what was interesting was the gang
Mhm.
let me out and told me to do what I love to do.
Yeah, but not
Cult,
these folks.
they told me to give up what I love to do and join their gang.
Right. Well, and
And
that shows you that, ultimately, in my limited knowledge, gangs tend to be more of, we're trying to look for some type of hope and possibility together.
yeah,
And with a cult, it's about, I'm looking to control a group of folks, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
there is sort of a different cultural premise, although from the outside it might look like they have some similarities. Um,
yeah, yeah.
I
And
love that you had that example of this group of people who endorsed your liberation and supported your liberation early on. Did you feel like um, that part of you or that experience at all was something that you could tap into as a resource when you were dealing with the aftermath of leaving the cult experience?
I would say, yeah, I don't think that I was completely conscious. I would
Hmm.
say a lot of these things I became more conscious of over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
But I would say that at the time, fortunately, it didn't last long. Matter of fact, let me just say this. Um, Not everybody in this particular organization were bad people. And I really don't even want to,
Yeah.
I want to forgive and let go of my experiences
Yeah.
with some of these people. But there was this one guy in particular, I'll never forget it. I came over to his house, we are just hanging out,
Mm.
and I'm sitting in his chair. There's a table here and a flower. He's
Hmm.
sitting there, his legs are kicked up, typical, 80s, man, just kind of,
Yeah.
sitting back. We're watching TV, and he looks over at me and he says, Phil, get out of here. You're better than this.
Wow.
And And I looked at him and I felt it. Like I
Yeah.
felt it. I knew what he was telling me to
You knew
do.
he was
I
telling the
knew what he
truth.
was saying. Yeah. And I did.
Wow.
I left. And it took me a while, about a year, to come to myself,
Yeah.
to come to the realization that what I did was a mistake
Hmm.
and that I am an actor. And right then and there, I started auditioning and I was back off to the races.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I agree with you. I don't actually believe that there's any bad guy out there. In my experience, there's a quote by someone named Byron Katie that I really live by, and it's, if I were thinking and believing what you were thinking and believing, I would do the same thing.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's going off of what they can understand at any given moment, and a lot of that is based on that connection with fear. And
Yeah.
if you feel like you have to make a choice, like you've been faced with several times, that's going to affect your survival,
Yeah.
then you're going to do something that's not necessarily aligned with your values, right?
Yes. That's right.
um and again, you have had, and I don't know what you would call it, but some sort of divine intervention several
Oh, yes.
times.
Oh, yes.
And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
curious, like, what relationship have you built with that experience, and or faith trust for that experience to continue in your future?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a very religious household. And, you know, my there's a denomination. I don't know if you know, like, you don't think about the Church of God in
I'm
Christ.
from yeah, I'm from Church of Christ, Baptist, Evangelical Christianity.
Oh,
I've
really?
I've
You know.
I've I
So,
I've lived that story. I've done the cult thing as well.
oh, you
So
have, okay,
you
good.
can you
So,
can yeah.
okay. So my mother is Church of God in Christ. That's
Hmm.
Black Pentecostal.
Yeah,
My
I know
dad,
it.
my dad is Nation of Islam Muslim. I grew up in that household.
How did they pull that off?
Love,
I'm surprised they
love.
weren't both kicked out.
No, it was love
They
was the thing.
maintained their affiliation with both of
Yes,
those groups throughout their
they did.
marriage.
They did.
That's a story we should
Yeah,
document.
yeah, yeah. They. It was, love triumphs over all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I grew up in that, and so it caused me early on to be a seeker.
Yeah.
So um, I had some real spiritual experiences as a young person. I had some real spiritual experiences even in that situation that I was in, because that spiritual part of me is constantly seeking
Yeah.
that spiritual element. You know what I mean? And so uh, it's something that has always followed me. I would say that even though I was seeking, I still had it in my mind that it was out here somewhere.
Hmm.
And so looking out here kind of kept me blind to what
Hmm.
was inside. And so this became a trend throughout my young life as an actor.
Hmm.
I would say it maybe even affected my acting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't really, I would say, until 2011 that there was a massive shift,
Hmm.
right? And mind you, by now I had already gone through this period of being homeless.
Yep.
That's on the TEDx talk. But I came out of that. And then I was fortunate to get back on my feet as an actor again.
Yep.
Then I got married, had three children. They're all, two of them are young adults now. I got a 14-year-old.
Aw.
And so even during the first, I don't know, 10 years or so of that, I was still seeking, but it
Yeah.
was still out here, that I'm looking, and it was still blinding me to what was
Hmm.
inside.
Hmm.
And then, just sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I during the period of being homeless, I dealt with substance, which was, my drug of choice was alcohol.
I was gonna say you got some 12-step language coming through.
Yes, there it is. That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my sobriety date is December 4th, 2009.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. But it
Mhm.
wasn't until 2011 that I had the miracle happen.
Mhm.
And so at this stage, when 2008 happened, it didn't affect me at the time. I was still like rolling. I was gone. I was making it was good. I was all good.
Yeah.
It caught up with me 2011.
Okay.
Yeah, it caught up with me, boy. That phone stopped ringing.
Mm,
Yeah, I would just be just,
staring at it.
yeah, it just stopped. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Anyway, make a long story short, um, here I am, three children, small at this time,
Mm,
and two of them go to this daycare center that's way like 25 minutes out here.
mhm,
Then I got to take my youngest to the preschool place, which is another way 20 or so minutes here.
mm,
Then I got to take my wife all the way downtown Memphis. That's where I was at that time.
mhm.
Way that was another. And so I knew in my car that I had to pray to start.
Yes.
And I only had $5 in my pocket that I was not going to be able to make it home after I dropped everybody
Mm.
off. And so I'm a reader. I mean, if you saw this table, you would just be, shocked at how many. It's just a mess full of books.
Yeah.
Um, I had to sell my precious books, not all of them, but some of
No.
them. Yeah, if you're Memphis and you're watching, you know where Burke's Bookstore is. Well, I went there. I
Ugh,
took my precious books
your
and
books.
I sold them so I could
Ugh.
have cash to put in the tank so I can get home and know I can pick everybody up.
Oh my word.
So I do it and I pick everybody up and get home. I have a little extra. Even when broke, I must have my coffee. So I went to Starbucks.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sitting with my coffee at Starbucks on the outside, and it's a balmy day, and it's cloudy like how it is today, and the breeze is blowing. And I felt something in me say, let's go for a walk.
Wow.
And it was serene. I was like, okay. So I get in my car, drive to this park not far away,
Yeah.
and you walk around the park. It's a mile. And I
Yeah.
walked around it 7 times, and not on purpose.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what was said to me. All I know is when I came out of that park, I was different. There was a serenity and a peace that everything was going to be okay. Somehow, I didn't know how, but I just knew it. And as soon as I got home, my wife said, "Oh, guess what? XYZ came and there was a check for her, and then there's a residual check that came for me, and then the next day something else happened, and there was still all these mountains of bills, but I would sleep peacefully like a baby every night, and it just kept going, and these miracles just kept happening, and I can tell you right now, it hasn't stopped. Now,
Ah,
not without challenges, the challenges of life. Not every day is a day where I'm completely bubbly and up, but I will say that I have many more great days than I do challenging days emotionally, that is.
yeah,
It is because I've realized through the course of time that the higher power is within me.
that's right.
I look in now, and so that's the big difference.
Ugh, so gorgeous. Reminds me of Jericho, right? Around
Yes,
the
yes, that's
ah,
right. Yeah,
oh
that's
my
right.
gosh.
Yeah,
So in those moments where, even with this new reality where miracles are your norm, your expectation, on those dip days or moments, how do you support yourself? What
sure.
kind of rituals do you have, practices, mantras, activities like 12 step? What do you use for those moments?
I try to make it a habit every morning. I've learned a meditation practice, and
Mhm.
I've learned a yoga practice, really combined Kriya yoga,
Yeah.
yeah, combined meditation and hatha yoga. And then also too, I've been practicing Tai Chi and Qigong for the past 14
Mm,
years. So I do
mhm.
these things every day. and pray. I pray. I pray every day. And I study. I study every morning. You know, to transform my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, being an actor,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the unknown so much.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the ups and downs of life happen, financial challenges, especially when it's not just you have, you know, children and young
Yep.
adults and colleges and all these different things that that is how I start my day that helps. I would say the other thing is understanding the power of breath or the power of breathing.
Talk
So
about
that
that.
yes, in the moment, you know, when you're understanding the importance and the power of breath, this is what can help you immediately in the moment, right? When you're able to take that nice sized breath and breathe it out. And when you're able to say one mantra, as I always say, is God's got it. You know,
God's got it.
God's got it. Yeah. And then, you know, that there are these attributes that is within us that we can tap into to address the positive side to things,
Mm-hmm.
or the cup half empty. I mean, half full instead of half
It's that
empty. Yeah,
perspective. Yeah.
the perspective. Yeah, being able to see, you know, what it is from the standpoint of, you know, I have this much. I'm grateful for this. Now all I
Mm-hmm.
got to do is get this, this, and this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that element. Then also too, I would say even the most important thing, the absolute most important thing, is to take attention off of myself.
Ah,
Yeah, to begin to think about other people, to find out how to be a blessing to other people.
yep.
Um, and lastly, the art itself,
Mm.
the
Mm-hmm.
art of acting and storytelling itself.
Mm-hmm.
There's another TED talk that I did called "Storytelling is the Yoga of the Soul,"
Ah, amen.
and it really is.
Yep.
They say it's the same benefits as
Yep.
practicing yoga when you're telling stories.
Yep.
And I had an interesting experience with this, a very, very personal experience with this, which made me want to do that talk.
Mm-hmm.
Some years ago at Tennessee Shakespeare, the artistic director Dan McClary
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to do um, Mark Antony and Julius Caesar.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, at this time was one of those low moments, and I just didn't feel I was mentally healthy enough
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to take on a role like that. I
Yeah,
just
that's a big
wasn't.
role.
And and Dan said, "Darius, you need to do this. It'll be good for you."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh wow, I probably need to do this." And so, make a long story short, I ended up. Well, first I went to my therapist because I knew what he was going to say. I was like, I'm going to go to my therapist because my therapist is going to tell me, you know what? You probably shouldn't do it. You
You
probably should
wanted a
just,
permission slip to get out of
yes,
it.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I knew he was going to say that, you know? And I went there and I was like, I'm going to go there. And he's going to basically, yes, you know, you shouldn't do it. It's probably not a good idea.
Uh-huh.
And that ain't what he said. That is not what the man said. He was like, you know, you really should do it. I was
Thank
like,
God. You're like, come on, give me an excuse.
so yeah, no. So I ended up doing it. But what I noticed was when I got up early in the morning, because you know he has the in the show, Mark Anthony has I think like a monologue that's 4 pages long.
Yeah, that sounds
I
about
wanted
right.
yeah, so I want to start on earlier. So I got up and started working on it. But I noticed when I started working on it, that depression bubble kind of
That's
just
right.
burst, and it just kept lifting. And every day it kept lifting. And so I want to say, you know, the people out there too, you know, doing what you love to do and taking action in it is another way.
That's right. And that creativity is a huge spiritual connector. I really
Mhm.
believe that our creative energy is a part of experiencing the creator. And
Yes.
that when we are not creating, we're not in as much connection with that
Yeah.
creator divinity that's within us. And not to mention the fact that, with memorization
Hmm.
comes something that I think has something to do with wellness, brain, I don't know what it is, but if you think about how, especially you and I with our childhoods in the church,
Mhm.
memorization of scripture was so embedded in there.
Yes. Yeah,
And
well,
that practice of that attention and that learning and that memorization is something that I believe really goes hand in hand with the oral tradition of storytelling throughout indigenous societies,
yeah,
because we didn't have the written word for so long. And there was
yeah.
something that I believe that we as humans developed inside of us about memorizing stories and memorizing
Mhm.
scripture that does something spiritually,
Yeah,
whether it's poetry that you're using or scripture or even something meaningful in the form of a play or acting. There's something about that time period. It's contemplative, but it's not about you,
right.
and it takes you out of that. There's something magical happening there, and I don't know exactly what that is, but I would imagine that actors, especially actors like yourself who choose projects that have a real strong personal meaning and a contribution to the collective, that
Yeah.
that would have some sort of magic embedded in it.
Yeah, I believe that it is, and also too, there's the power of the word, right?
Yes.
And that words are creative.
Yep.
Um, and words, letters really have life in them, you know? And so there's something special about learning someone else's text,
Yeah.
learning the text that you wrote, because letters, you have to spell
Yeah. Yeah.
letters.
Yeah. You're actually casting a spell.
You're
Yeah, for
casting the spell.
sure.
Yeah,
For
because
sure.
there's devices spell letters, right?
Yeah.
But also too, you know, um, through my journey and what have you, the more of the religious experience led me to want to know, okay, so the Bible is in English, yet these folk were Hebrew.
Yeah.
What would happen if I learned a little bit of Hebrew? Right.
Hey.
And so, and I could be wrong here. I'm trying to say this the best way that I can, but I think in the Hebrew, when it says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Somewhere in the mix, in the translation, is saying in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth with bet,
Okay, like Aleph Bet, AB.
aleph bet,
Mhm,
and because the aleph is not pronounceable,
mhm,
so aleph bet, where we get
mhm.
the alphabet from,
Yeah, yeah,
and so in other words, creation happened through letters,
yeah, yeah,
through
yeah.
words, and even as we create our lives, once
I love
again, it's
that.
through words, letters. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I love that.
Yeah.
Not to mention that, coming back to the breathing, what I do in the day to day is I work with folks on their nervous system
Oh. Oh
using
wow.
exercises to strengthen and increase flexibility in the vagus nerve,
Oh.
which there's 4 areas of exercises that do that, and 2 of those areas are breath work and vocalization, because
Oh wow.
both of those tie right into the vagus nerve, which goes down both sides of our throat and
Oh wow.
alongside our auditory canal. And so hearing and resonating through vocalization are a part of supporting that vagus nerve, which then governs all of our physiological functions and access to the frontal lobe, which you and I could deep dive sometime if you're
Yeah,
interested, because I think
I
there's
am interested.
a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
But what's really cool about learning a set of information and then working with the cadence of how you say that in storytelling or acting or scripture memorization is that you are doing breath work as
Yes.
you do that,
Mhm.
because of the pacing, especially if you've got a monologue that's
Yeah.
4 pages long. You really need to be aware of your breath and be very you know disciplined about how you're using your breath so that you can express and emote what you want. And so that breath pacing along with the vocalization is like a perfect vagus nerve exercise. So with acting, you're giving that to yourself.
True.
So
It's very
I
true.
just think it's great. I'm so glad that you have had that from such an early point to give you this sort of like home to come back to,
Yeah,
way to come back to that divinity and that creator energy that's
yeah,
inside of you, and then to contribute in such meaningful ways.
yeah. I really, you know, it feels beautiful being an actor, um, and it feels beautiful having a life of storytelling because of understanding what you just said. And what can I say? There is something very beautiful and powerful about stories and becoming characters in
Yeah.
stories, and the transformative element and how it does tap into our breathing and our breath, and what it does to us as human beings. So,
Yeah.
so it's
And, one more piece. I know we're getting to the end of our time here, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Bob Proctor. He's like a
yeah,
big
yeah, oh
create
yeah,
your own reality kind of guy.
oh yeah.
So one of his like go-to book recommendations, and I'm gonna forget it right now, but it's an old acting book. It's like
Oh,
just a book about acting. If I wonder if I could find it real quick, but anyways,
please! I didn't even know he talked about that.
yeah. So, the reason why he studied it,
Mhm.
um, was because he understood that what we're doing here as people, trying to do this spiritual thing in this human body is we are acting. We're
Right.
living into the character of, I show up as I'm playing Gazika and Kosi, I'm playing podcaster right now. And
Mhm.
oh, I just found it.
Mhm.
It's called The Art of Acting by Stella Adler.
Oh, Stella Adler, yes, that's a great
Hmm.
book.
Okay,
Yes,
so
yeah.
that's one of his like top book recommendations.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
so when you understand acting, you understand how understanding that person's perspective, understanding their characteristics and attributes, and understanding their goals and their motivations, you
Yeah,
can actually transform into that person in such a way that the audience cannot differentiate you from that person.
very
And
true.
we have the power to do that in this avatar that we're creating in this game. And so many people feel like, well, I'm stuck. I was born into this and it's all just fate. And what am I going to do?
Mhm.
And that ability to be like, oh, hey, well, if I want this body slash identity to be something different, why not give myself a new name? Why not give myself new characteristics? Maybe I was a person who was always shy, but then I
Yeah,
learn a new set of skills and I
true.
get to shift that and transform that and come
So
into a
true.
new character.
Yes.
And I think that's also probably really empowering, even on a subconscious level for
Yes.
actors, because you see how, yeah, I can embody something and then I actually become that. And even method actors, we've seen that go in a scary way too,
Good, good. Yeah.
right? But
I would say, that's really interesting you would say that because I think that I think a lot of us actors don't. I think we know how to do it on stage, but haven't learned that we could do it in life.
yeah.
But I think what you're saying is something that I've realized, and that there are other actors that have realized that.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think it's important. I think it happens. Um, it happens organically when I'm coaching.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where there really is something. Even uh, Warren Buffett
Mhm.
said about public speaking that when you public speak, your unusual self comes about.
Ooh, I
You
like
know?
that.
Yeah. And so what you're saying is right and exact. And it would
Mhm.
be beautiful if it's my desire to find a way to continue to embrace what you said in my own life and
Mm.
then incorporate it just in life as I'm working with people and engaging people. And then
Mhm.
realizing too that I'm displaying it every time I do get a role and become a
Yes.
character. the possibility of I can be whatever I want to be.
That's it. The possibility. The
Yeah,
possibility. Yeah.
yeah,
Ugh.
yeah,
May it
yeah.
be so. I celebrate that intention and I see it coming
I
through for
appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
listen, Darius, this has just been a total joy for me. I'm
Oh,
so
me too, Z.
grateful.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm very grateful. I knew it was going to be. I could tell by your photo.
Ah,
Beautiful, beautiful, bright photo. Actually, I couldn't wait because I just sensed from our email exchange. And did we speak on the phone or was it just email when you mentioned, I can't
it
remember,
was
but
just email with
it was just
Frederick
email
Douglass.
with Freddie Douglas. I just sensed that it was going to be great. And so I've been looking forward to it. And I'm glad to have been privileged to be on your show.
Awesome. Well, tell the folks where they can reach
Oh,
you or what you offer, anything like that that you'd like to share.
yeah, I'm at DariusWallace.com. You can engage me there, but you can also engage me in Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can subscribe to a newsletter on my website. And yes, I offer coaching for people who want to enhance their ability to speak. And then I also do a one-man show on Frederick Douglass, and I do inspirational speaking. But hey, at the end of the day, if you want to just hang out, hey, just check me out on my website and connect with me, and we can take it from there.
Awesome. So cool. Well, I'm going to take you up on that because I want to
Yeah,
spend some more
please,
time with you.
please, please, please. I want to that breath thing that you were talking about. I've never
Yeah.
heard it explained that way, so I am interested in that. So
Okay. All right. Well, we'll close off for here, but hang for a second and you and I will
okay, sounds good.
catch up.